Have you ever held it together all day? The appointments, the admin, the needs, the emotions, and then the house finally goes quiet and you find yourself eating at night, not because you're hungry, but because you're depleted. Today I'm sitting down with Nadège Saysana and we're talking about why this happens, especially for caregivers, and how to meet it with compassion instead of shame. By the end of this conversation, you'll understand the nervous system why. You'll be able to spot the shame loop and you'll have one tiny pause you can try tonight so you can feel calmer and more supported in your own body. Just a gentle note before we begin. Today's conversation includes discussion of emotional eating and binge eating. Please listen in a way that feels supportive for you. You're welcome to pause and come back at any time. If you're tired of holding it together in hard rooms, appointments, hospital days and service systems, and then crashing afterwards, you're in the right place. Hi lovely, caregiver to caregiver, I'm really glad you're here. I'm Michelle. As a caregiver and advocate, I know firsthand what it's like to become the walking medical encyclopedia, to fight for continuity so you don't have to repeat your story, and to leave the room thinking, I should have said that differently. No pressure, no perfect routines, and no toxic positivity. Just one gentle reset and one practical next step so you can have calmer days, clearer words, and advocate without self-abandoning. If you'd like a guided space to hold gratitude and truth together, you can download my free gratitude journal. I'll link it in the show notes. No pressure, just there if it supports you. Let's take a deep breath and start. Today's guest is Nadège Saysana, also known as Nan, a life coach who helps women stop binge eating without using willpower. Nan calls it being strong in the gym, stuck in the kitchen, and she knows this cycle personally. She binge ate for 30 years before learning the problem was never food. It was the nervous system load underneath it. This is a no diet, no shaming conversation. We're not doing food rules or weight loss pressures. We're talking about stress, safety, coping, and self-trust. Nan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Nan, I'd love to start with your story, just enough to give listeners that Me Too feeling. And before we go deeper, what's the version of your story that feels most important for listeners to know? The part that explains why you care so much about this work.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story that I think is also so common. Even though at the time I was thinking I'm the only one on the planet and I felt so ashamed. But actually, it all started with my very first diet when I was probably around 16. So a teenager feeling insecure in our body like so many of our little ladies right now. And I thought that I would feel better, more confident if I looked a certain way. And I thought going on a diet, which at the time was so common, and I'm afraid it still is. And so I did that. And so dieting means I restricted my food and I got the results I wanted. I lost some weight. But then I gained them back immediately, almost immediately, which also is so common because after restricting yourself, the body can't take it anymore. And not just the body, but the mind too. And so after I had gained more the weight back, I thought, well, it worked the first time I dieted, so let's do it again. But this time, let's be even stricter because enough is enough. And so that's how I started this cycle of restriction, and then when I couldn't take it anymore, rebellion. And it became the constant loop that I was experiencing, restricting my food, like starting the day with, okay, today is the day, today I'm going to be good, and so on. And by the end of the day, I couldn't take it anymore, and I would rebel against my own rules. And instead of having just one bite, maybe one cookie, I would eat the whole bag. And again, in the night, really angry with myself, really frustrated, and deciding, okay, tomorrow is a reset. Tomorrow I'll start over again and again. And so I felt kind of trapped in that loop for 30 years. Yes, which is also so common, but I didn't know that.
So I can hear that this hasn't been overnight situation. It's not something that just one day you were fine and the next day you weren't. This is something that has built up over years of retrying with yourself every time you slipped up, every time you started again. What did binge eating look like in real life for you as an adult, especially as the house got really quiet the moment after dinner when you were like sitting down, relaxing. What happened for you in that moment?
Yes, so it didn't happen overnight, you're right. It's a habit that I built. And so as soon as my husband left home to go to his Aikido and my son or kids were asleep, I would feel that kind of freedom, which is now, finally, I have time for myself, have space for myself, I have the whole room for myself. I can finally take care of me. And because I didn't know any better than giving myself food, like it's called comfort food for a reason. We're looking for comfort in the food. And yes, it's a bit comforting in that it gives us, well, if it's sweet food like the ones I like, it gives us a dopamine hit. So that's why I would turn to that kind of food, the cakes, the chocolate, even the ice cream, even if I don't like anything cold. And so that's what it looked like. Actually, it wouldn't start as soon as my husband would leave the house, but before I would anticipate, okay, when the kids are finally asleep, when my husband has finally left or is also asleep, then I will have that time. And so I was building up that anticipation, that desire, just finally I'll be able to take care of me and experience a bit of pleasure. And I was fueling that future moment with positive thoughts about that. And then, of course, as soon as he was gone, as soon as everyone else was asleep, I would go straight to the kitchen and really dive deep into the ice cream tub or the jar of jam too. Anything that felt good for me in the moment. So that's what it would look like.
And when you're talking about that thought pattern of once the kids are asleep, once I've finished my responsibilities, once I've got to the point where there's a quiet moment, and that is so prevalent for caregivers because we are on all the time. And so for us, even though we know we probably should be asleep because we've been up since 3 a.m. or whatever it might be, we're dying for that moment of peace and calm to give back to ourselves a little bit. And so this pattern of giving yourself a treat or looking for that dopamine hit that makes you feel like you've done something for yourself is like almost a baseline at times for when we're on exhaustion road, or we've depleted everything because we've had meltdowns all day, or there's been an unexpected chaos that's erupted across the day that was not part of our routine, and we're battling with, okay, do we fold the laundry and wash the dishes? No, I need to fuel myself, I need to give myself this second. And so we take the quiet moments at midnight or 1 a.m. whilst we've finished all of the things before we start the next day. So you were talking about willpower. You believe it was willpower that was part of the cycle. What was the first thing that helped you to see that it wasn't a character flaw and it was a coping pattern that you were using?
Well, it took me so long to realize that it was actually emotional eating because I was raised, I don't know if it's a generation thing or if it's a French thing because I live in Paris. I'm born French, but I was definitely never taught anything about emotion. And the implicit message in my family is that, well, it would be better if you didn't have any emotion, but if you do happen to have emotions, please don't talk about it, unless it's joy, and that's okay, so long as you don't get overexcited. So I never knew what to do with my emotions. I never knew it was okay to have emotions. So when I remember taking a test, and it was years ago, and the result was, you're an emotional eater, and I was just like, no way, there's no way, it can't be me. I pictured myself, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Spock on Star Trek, the character who doesn't have emotion, who's only logic, that's who I wanted to be. So it was such a slap when I read that result that I was an emotional eater. It was, no, it can't be. But I still remembered that verdict, that diagnosis, if we want to call it this way, and it still was in my mind. So I slowly started exploring that. What does it mean really? I started getting curious about that because you mentioned willpower, and I had come to realize that yes, willpower doesn't work. And the way I like to describe willpower is that throughout the day or whenever you tell yourself, oh, this food is so good, like for instance chocolate. I'm probably not the only one to think that chocolate is really good. So we're creating desire on one hand, it's the desire, but the willpower sounds like, but I can't have it, I shouldn't have it, I mustn't have it, this is not good for me. So we're creating intense desire on one hand, and on the other hand we're denying ourselves the right to have that food. That's willpower. I really want this, but I can't have it. And actually what I teach my client is that you can also decide to decrease the desire that you have for the food. It's just that, yeah, it's food, it's good, it's okay, but it's not, it's just extremely good. So this is part of an emotion, because we create that desire, that impulse, that craving, that urge to have the food. We also have the power to reduce this emotion of really wanting the food. That's emotion. It all comes down to emotion. I didn't know it at the time. Now I do. Indeed, I was an emotional eater. Now I can say it. And it's actually okay. What we do always comes from an emotion. So it's good to know which emotion is driving you to take action. Like, as you were saying, when we're exhausted at the end of the day and we turn to food, it's because we're looking for peace. We're looking for calm. We perhaps tell ourselves, I deserve it. Perfectly normal. It's okay. We're creatures of emotions. We're human beings. So it's okay. It's normal.
You were talking about emotions and that a generational moment in our day to day. It also applies significantly when you step into a role of being an advocate, because you can't be too happy, you can't be too sad, you can't be too angry, because you will be seen as not being able to cope, or can't possibly be caring for someone with such high needs, or you're being combative. And so we do have to regulate our emotions all the time. If we feel like really upset about a situation, we can't react in the way that would be normal, what would be seen as a side effect of a situation happening. We have to remain regulated, keep calm. And so even as a child, we don't really talk in depth about emotions, how emotions work in our body, what things can happen when we broach sadness or grief or anger or excitement. We don't have the level of equipment that we have when we talk about writing an English sentence or creating a paragraph in writing. We don't have those same structures when we're talking about emotion. So it would go hand in hand that we haven't been educated on the deeper emotions that we're seeking in calm, relaxation, and rewards for hard things. Because when we're younger, we get taught, oh, if you finish this, here's a reward. You've been well behaved the whole week, here's a reward. And not that that's a bad process, but it doesn't come with the explicit education that when you're exhausted and you've kind of found that balance between, okay, this is my moment to recharge. And when it's at midnight or late at night, there isn't really many other options available when we're looking at that reward system. And reward generally comes hand in hand with ice cream, chocolate, cookies. Unless you can't eat those things and your diet is restricted, it's kind of a natural societal process that we go through. When we're out at dinner, we have dessert. When we're sitting with friends and we're talking and we're having snacks, and it is part of our social interactions as well. And I want to spend most of our time on the why, because with caregivers, understanding the why really helps reduce that shame loop that we sometimes experience when we're talking about harder topics. Why does the urge to eat often spike at nighttime, after dinner, when the house is finally quiet, even if someone has ate well all day, so they haven't missed any meals and they're full? Why is it that we still reach for those at nighttime?
Yeah, such a good question. So there are different reasons. So one would be exactly as in the example that I gave earlier on about my story, is just that when the kids are quiet, when all the responsibilities are done, then you have that space for yourself. You actually have the time. Even if you mentioned the exhaustion, maybe sometimes it would be better to actually go to bed. But that's not what we want, because we finally have some time and we want to use it for ourselves. So that could be one reason why the urge to eat spikes at nighttime, is because finally we have some time for us. So that may be one reason. Another reason may be because the urge to eat spikes at nighttime because the willpower is gone. So we may have been using that willpower, I really want this, but I can't, throughout the day. But willpower is like a battery. So you use it all day. At the end of the day, there's no more. Of course, then it's so much easier to turn to the food. Those may be the reasons why. And also, we've told ourselves no throughout the day. And you were mentioning it, staying in character, not being too sad, too angry, too happy or whatever, because you have to take care of other people, so you can't be yourself fully. But at night, you can be fully yourself. So it's as if you let go of the character, the uniform that you've been wearing all day, and you're finally yourself. And then it means that you give in to any impulses that you may have after being restraining yourself all throughout the day. It's really this all or nothing thinking. It's just, I've been good all day, now I can't take it anymore, I deserve a treat. And then you switch to the other side of the spectrum, which is what happens. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, it does definitely make sense. And I know that the nervous system plays a big role in how we are interacting with these moments of joy. Can you explain how the nervous system is creating these experiences, that it's not just the willpower? So what happens when someone's been in on mode all day, like we've been talking about, anticipating needs, staying alert, managing emotions, being the stable one, and then suddenly there's silence? What is happening with our nervous systems?
Right, so I'm not a specialist of the nervous system, but what I understand is that, yes, you're so perhaps tense all day long, you're so focused that, of course, your brain gets tired, your nervous system gets tired. And at the end of the day, just like a battery, it needs to be recharged. And we often think that turning to food is going to fuel our body, which it does, but perhaps not exactly the way we want to. And I know I have several clients who, by the end of the day, they've been working all day, they've got a full-time job, and at the end of the day, they still want to do more. They still want to create things that are supposed to be fulfilling for them. Maybe they have a side hobby or something like that, a side hustle. And so they think that turning to food, especially rich food, is going to help them keep going, which it does, because yes, food fuels our body, but it may not be what they need in the moment. It's what they want, but not what they need. So that's where it can be a bit tricky. It's just really hearing, really listening, really paying attention to your body. What's it saying? If I'm yawning and if I keep on yawning, but I also want to create that freebie or whatever it is for my business, what do I do? I've given myself a deadline, but I'm also exhausted. What do I do? And sometimes we push through, but we also need to realize that it comes with a cost, that the next day we're probably going to be feeling even worse because perhaps we went to bed extremely tired and also stuffing ourselves, which we're going to be regretting the next day, and we'll still be in that loop of restriction, rebellion. We need to pay attention to the body, which is a whole skill that I think is extremely valuable too. Just, what does my body need? What is it saying to me? What is it trying to tell me, to let me know? And can I pay attention? Just be curious about it too.
And I think when you're talking about the control, the rebellion, the numbness that often is emotional drivers for seeking out comfort in food, sometimes there's that transition going from chaos to quiet that can make us feel unsafe or uncontained. And by reaching for food, it gives us something to focus on and to feel connected to. And I know that you work with women who look disciplined on the outside. Why do you think high capacity people can feel so out of control when it comes to food? What's the misunderstanding there?
Yes, and I think if you compare food with alcohol or cigarette, tobacco, the thing is that we need food. We always need food, whereas we can decide to stop drinking alcohol, to stop smoking. The body doesn't need to. What can be tricky for people is that we still need to eat food. So we will be around food all the time, and it can't be clear cut. So for some people, or at some point, it can be tricky to decide, okay, what food am I going to actually eat and where do I draw the line, basically. And it can evolve, and that's perfectly fine, and that's perfectly okay. You can decide at some point that, yeah, you're going to stop eating sugar if you want to at some point, and you may reintroduce it later on and decide that, yeah, you're going to be fine with this kind of food or this amount of sugar. And I like to think that it's actually a good thing that there's no clear cut, because what I love is that we can be flexible about this depending on our season in life or our desires or where we're at mentally, how we're feeling around food and our capacity to be around some food at some point. Sometimes it can be actually easier indeed to say, well, I'm not going to buy that particular brand of cake anymore, because whenever I do, I overdo it and I don't want that anymore. So what's going to be easier for me is not have them in the house, and I feel fine about that. So long as you feel okay about that and it doesn't trigger the opposite reaction that you're craving it intensely all the time and you can't stop thinking about it. If it actually makes you feel good, that may be the perfect thing for you to do at some point. And then later on, when you've built that self-trust that yes, you can be around food that used to be difficult, and you actually are amazed that you don't overeat them, like chocolate spread, which is called Nutella, which is very, very famous in France. I used to dread having that in my house because I knew that I would eat not just a little bit, but the whole thing. Today, at some point, my husband bought 5 jars, and I just couldn't care. Even the one that was actually opened, it was there, it was open, it didn't call my name, as we like to say. So when you start trusting yourself, you can reintroduce some food in the house, and that's perfectly fine. So yeah, it's a process, it's a skill that you can learn, just like you've learned so many skills over the years. And so that's what I like, is that people usually start by completely feeling out of control, but they can see also their progress over time. And that, I think, builds that confidence, their self-confidence too, which is a beautiful thing to see.
And I think that's such an exhale for people listening. It reframes this as overload rather than failure. That, guess, before you look at food, you're changing your relationship with how you're viewing those treats, how you're experiencing those moments, rather than it being, I mustn't eat it, I mustn't eat it. It's about moderation that feels comfortable for you. And that might be not having it in the home, or being able to have it in the home and be with it and not be craving it and going, once you have one piece of bread with it on it, then you just have to have the entire experience. So I want to take just a moment to help our listeners just regulate themselves. So before we keep going, I just want to do a tiny pause. If it helps, I'd like you to drop your shoulders. Just exhale once and remind yourself you don't have to take this in all at once. Take what helps and leave the rest. And I want to name and transition to naming the loop, because carers often punish themselves the next day. Can we walk through the common cycle? Urge, eating, relief, shame, tomorrow I'll be good. Restriction, over control, and then the next binge. Why does the I'll be stricter tomorrow plan often backfire, especially for caregivers or those who use food as a reward system?
Yes, so the I'll be good system backfires because very often is extremely, well, not just restrictive, but also punitive. It's not, you have a stomachache, so you'd better not eat too much until you feel better. It's not coming from love at all. It's rather that you've overdone it, so now you're going to pay for it. Something like that. It depends on people, the way they talk to themselves, but very often that's the inner dialogue that's like. So it's not for the person, but it's rather against. You've overdone it, now you need to pay for it. You need to compensate for it. And some people will restrict severely. Some people will go to the gym, decide that they're going to do a lot of, running maybe, just to make sure the calories in are now calories out, things like that. But the problem is that they set very unrealistic expectations to themselves. It's just, I remember myself, I was just, I've eaten so much. And I used to count the amount of calories I would have had. So I was thinking, okay, since I've had that many calories yesterday, then today I don't need to eat until 6 p.m., which sounded good on paper, but it doesn't make any sense because of course my body was used to having fuel regularly and I was depriving my body of that. So it backfires on a physiological level. The body wants food, even if you've decided otherwise, but also on the psychological level, because you keep telling yourself, no, you've been bad yesterday, you need to pay for it, but you're bullying yourself all day long. So of course it's going to backfire, because who would want to have this inner bully, inner dictator in your head? You can't take it anymore. All you want is to let go of that person, of that version of you, and give yourself a free pass, give yourself some freedom to be carefree and to be not thinking about that, about yourself, not judging yourself so harshly. So that's why it backfires, because of those extremely unrealistic expectations and the reality of your body living a normal life and you wanting to feel good about yourself.
And my understanding is that when we do these extreme opposites, our body doesn't know when it's getting food or when it's not getting food. So it generally stores to ensure that your body has enough energy and has enough capacity to keep you functioning when you're doing this, especially if you do it day after day after day. It's like, oh, I might not have food for the next 15 hours. I need to store fat, I need to store water, and then that can actually have a negative self image layer added to the equation. If you could bust just one myth about willpower and binge eating, what would it be?
Well, I think the main myth that I learned was actually a myth is that it has nothing to do with food. Sure, we eat, we turn to food, so yes, it makes sense that we would think it's about food, especially since we become obsessed with food and should I restrict this food, should I stop eating that food, etc. But actually, it's all because of the emotions, and you described that very well. It's just this overload at the end of the day, this exhaustion, this depletion that you feel after taking care of other people all day long, or just one person, but all day long, and be giving. So it's actually not about the food, because pattern we're talking about could be the exact same one, but for some people it would take the shape of scrolling their phones, over drinking or smoking, or for some people it's even over cleaning, over tidying their house, or overworking or overspending. So it's not about the food or the computer or the house or the cushions on the couch or anything like that. It's really about the emotions we don't want to feel and that we want to numb ourselves from feeling, and these emotions that we think that the phone, the TV, the items we're buying are going to give us. So it could actually be very good information to actually pause and think, if you can, for just one split second, okay, I really want that chocolate, that piece of chocolate. Why? What do I think this piece of chocolate is going to give me? Or I really want to buy those flip-flops. Okay, why? What do I think those flip-flops are going to give me once I've got them? And if you could gain just awareness of the emotions that you think they're going to make you feel, it's already a huge step. Super simple question to ask yourself. Can be tough in the moment, but it's going to give you a lot of information about you and what you actually really need.
I think that's really a kinder alternative to the morning after punishment that most people go through. How do you help someone respond to themselves like a human instead of a project? Because I feel like that morning after punishment is a project that then we've got focus on for the day.
Oh, I love that question. So, how do I help someone respond to themselves like a human, not a project? That's so true, because I love the way you phrase it. I used to think of myself as a project, just like there's this goal to be achieved, there's this version of me to become. So it's true that over the years I had to learn, and I'm so grateful I did, how to respond to myself like a human. And I think the main one in terms of being the human was compassion, kindness. And it was not easy because I was so used to being mean to myself that whenever somebody was offering me to be kind to myself, I was just like, no, that can't work. It's really the stick or the carrot, and I couldn't see the point of using the carrot. No, the stick felt so necessary, as if I finally beat myself hard enough, then I'll finally get it. Then I'll finally understand and learn lessons and change my behaviors. But after doing this for 30 years, I also came to the point where I realized, well, actually, it's not working. It's actually backfiring, because when I'm mean to myself, all I want to is run away from this version of me. And that's not helping at all. So what about learning how to be kind to myself? And that was tough too, because it was a brand new territory. And so I realized that I could also learn how to be kinder to other people too in the process. So that was a nice ripple effect from that. But I really started with, okay, I really want that food because I really think that I deserve it. I deserve a treat. And it started by validating the emotions that I was feeling. And it started with, of course, I really want that food because I see it as the relief that I deserve. So it makes sense that I would want the food. It makes sense that I would want this, and simply that. It's just, of course, I want this because I think it's going to make me feel better. It makes perfect sense. That was the very first step, and that brought me so much relief. And then I built.
And I'm hearing that we need soft edges along the way. So kind of an analogy that I use is a running river and its banks. So compassion and boundaries. You can't have one without the other, because if there were no boundaries or banks, where would the water would just go everywhere? There would be no structure to it. It would just cause destruction along its way. Whereas when we have those soft edges that allows us to ebb and flow as the water does, it gives us more stability and more grace along the way. So making sure that compassion is hand in hand with boundaries, because you can't have one without the other. I really think that that's important message for anybody who is struggling to add the human back into the project that they're working on, because we are not just there for punishment along the way from ourselves, not necessarily from the world around us, but we all have this negative monologue at some point in our lives, and sometimes it becomes louder than what reality really dictates that we need. And sometimes we just need that gentle reminder that we are human, that we do make mistakes, that we do have to have bandwidth for ourselves and show ourselves kindness and compassion on a day-to-day basis. And that's so aligned with Radiant Moments and J&B Inspired, because compassion without excuses and without shame is really important, because there are moments where things are tough and we just have to be kind in that moment and accept that, okay, we may have an urge to find that peace and calm, and that might be what we're doing in that moment. But if we have boundaries to say, yes, we can have it, yes, we can do this, and we can do it in moderation, then it's not, I really love the idea that the urges aren't the enemy. They're just information flowing to and from. So what is a craving or an urge in your framework? Is it hunger? Is it a habit? Is it emotion? Is it a nervous system discharge? Or is it an unmet need that we're trying to seek and resolve?
So many good options. Okay, I would say that an urge is not hunger, because, well, for most of my clients, they have urges after dinner. So usually they fed themselves. So that's how we know that if they want a little something, it's not hunger. They fed themselves, so it wouldn't make sense. Unless, of course, they only had 2 green beans, and yes, that would make perfect sense that their body would ask them for food, for fuel. But usually that's not the case at all. So an urge is not hunger. I would say it can be a habit if we've repeated it at the exact same time with the exact same trigger. So for me, when my husband would leave and I could hear the door shut, and I think, yes, that it is indeed an emotion. So an emotion that drives us to take action and basically to go to the kitchen, open the fridge, or open the pantry, open a bag of cookies or whatever it is. And so urges are an emotion that is not random. It doesn't happen because, for instance, if I go back to my example, I didn't feel urges because my husband left the home. I had urges because at the exact time I kept repeating myself, finally I can have whatever. And that's what created the urge. It's not the fact that he left, it's what I made it mean about me and what was available for me and that moment for me. So that's important to remember, and it can happen exactly at the same time or every day. So it's really coming from what you're telling yourself. It's not coming from the food, it's not coming from the moment, but it can be repeated so many times that then it becomes automatic. And that's why we may think, I don't know where it's coming from, I don't know what's coming over me. All of a sudden I find myself with my hand in the cookie jar, because you've repeated so many times that it's become unconscious, it's become automatic. But what's unconscious can become conscious, that you understand what's happening, and so that you can rewire, rework, and change your thoughts about it if you want to.
I really think that your message around that an urge is not the need for hunger, unless you've restricted so much that you haven't really eaten all day, and that it's more about recognizing a pattern that you've created rather than it being, how dare you eat, that's not the right direction. There's no punishment in it. It's just a gentle acknowledgement that maybe I've created a pattern for myself. Maybe I have found such comfort in these moments that I am not seeing the negative flow-on effect that that's having on my mental health, my physical well-being. And when someone realizes that I'm not hungry, I'm stressed, I'm lonely, I'm overwhelmed. What is the first kind step that you would recommend?
Yes, because as you mentioned, an urge is not a problem in itself, even though there might be consequences if you overeat and then you find yourself gaining weight and feeling bloated and not feeling good about yourself. So an urge is not a monster, it's actually a message. And so the first kind step could be to explore what's going on. And it can be the next day when you really bring in some curiosity, some kindness to yourself. If you're able to access this, it would be really wonderful to be just, I like to use the analogy of the detective. Become a detective, like on TV shows that I like so much, and try to explore what was happening really. Not from this judgmental, self-critical way, but really being curious. And then that could be the very first step, and asking yourself, why? Why did I eat this? Why did I keep eating? Why did I even finish the thing? What was going on for me that I thought that food was really necessary? And just asking yourself this question and making sure that it's really a curious question, it's just this why, instead of, oh, why did I do that, which is very different in tone and in the outcome, because it's going to shut you down. You're going to find answers. And even if you're not sure about the answers, you might have different options. You might think, okay, maybe because I had such a hard day. Maybe it's because the results that we were expecting from hospital were not exactly the ones we wanted to get. Or maybe it's because my mom called me 7 times and I couldn't take it anymore. Whatever comes up for you, trust yourself that it must be the right answer. Yes, you can go deeper, but if it's the first thing that pops to mind, even if you're not sure, it's okay. You've taken the first step and you don't have to dig any deeper. You can stay there. But the more you do it, the easier it will get and the more fun too, because you'll be on your side. You'll be really exploring why you're doing this from a kind, curious perspective, leaving out, slowly but surely, the shame, the guilt, the regret, all this self-criticism that's keeping you stuck, honestly.
I really think that moment when you said, why? But it was a gentle why, giving yourself permission to be curious and just acknowledge what's going on rather than diving super deep into coming up with, oh, you're hopeless, you can't do this, you can't do that. Just being curious. No judgment, no shame, just curiosity, and not needing to take any other step than recognizing what it is takes a significant amount of pressure off anybody starting on this journey when they recognize that they are using food as a reward system in maybe not the healthiest way. And I really love how kindness comes through when we're just curious, where we are not judging, we're just noticing, because it's such a simple process to have a thought and to leave the thought as it is, not to analyze it, not to go and seek immediate explanation for anything, just going, maybe I'm so busy that I'm not acknowledging my body's urges and needs during the day. I'm missing those moments where maybe I should have had something to eat, or I'm restricting and my body's saying, I need this, I need this. It's missing its salts, it's missing its magnesium, it might need potassium. And we're missing those cues along the way because as a caregiver, life is full. Life is chaotic at times and things sometimes don't go to plan. Sometimes we end up in hospital and there is no food and our child is, or our loved one is not able to eat because they have to have a surgery. And so you feel really rude and also you don't want to put pressure on them by eating in front of them, but you can't leave them alone. So before 12 hours has gone past and you've had nothing, you've woken up, you've gone straight to the hospital and there is no food. And so you have to also understand that in those moments, you've got to be gentle with yourself too, that your body at some point needs to catch up on the moments where you've missed out on water, fluids, food, sleep, because I find for myself personally, when I'm really exhausted, so my son has just been in hospital and the couple of days beforehand, up multiple times during the night, and so I'm tired. I had no chance or opportunity. There isn't like an offer of a biscuit and a cup of tea when you're in emergency departments or you're waiting for procedures to occur. And so I got to the end of the day and I realized that I had not had anything for almost 20 hours. And so by that time, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. You have that moment where you're like, my mouth feels like the Sahara Desert. Why? What's going on? And it's because you're just in advocate mode as a caregiver. And sometimes you're just so nervous about what they're going to say when they take you, or am I going into a bad newsroom? Are they going to tell me that I am going to spend the next couple of weeks in hospital? Those moments, you kind of forget your basic needs when you're caring for another person. So I found that when I'd missed that much, then I was starving, ravenous, and that's when that overeating kind of kicks in, because your body is like, I need fuel, and there's no off switch in that moment. And then you're like, why did I should have just had a piece of toast. I should have stuck with one thing and been fine. But you don't think about that stuff in that moment. And then taking it and going, okay, I know why. And that's okay to know why. The next step in my mind would be to say, how can I do that differently? What can I do so that I don't go 20 hours without food in these instances? Can I pack a snack so that I can step outside of the room and quickly have something to eat so that I can stay sustained? Can mum come and visit and just say hi so that I can go and grab something to eat, so that my child doesn't feel like they're alone in this experience? They're just not having the in your face moment of me eating and them not allowed to eat. So how do you help someone shift from what should I eat to what do I actually need without it becoming the mental load of having to keep everything on track? Because as a caregiver, our mental load is intense. It's not just the standard 1 to 5 of getting your child to and from school. It's all of the different elements of medications and what appointments do we need and what therapies have we got, and did we do this process, and I've got to order more of their enteral feeds. And so you end up in this load that you're just unaware of because you do 100,000 different things a day. So how do we help that process and not add to that mental load?
Exactly. Yes, that's such a good question, and it can be so helpful indeed. And of course, I don't want to add more to the overload, but because we know also that those situations going to hospital may happen again if they've happened before. So I think that the kindest thing to do for the future version of you who may be in that situation again would be to go back to the past experience and notice, I couldn't eat for 20 hours, and of course I didn't feel good at that point. So how can I help the future version of me go through that very same experience but in a better way? So as you said, it could be having a list of people to call so that you can have a little break from the situation. It could also perhaps be having a little bag, and maybe you've done that already, with the necessary material, a bottle of water, some healthy snacks that make you feel good, things like that. So it could be basically having a little plan in the shape of a bag or something like that, so that you're prepared. Because what I love is that quote by Nelson Mandela, I never lose, I either win or learn. So if you take this as a learning opportunity and build time after time using what you've noticed that you were needing, and using that to actually create something for you. So it could be around the food plan. What can I give myself ahead of time? What do I know that I like to actually eat to fuel my body in those situations? But also you could have what I call a pleasure plan, knowing that in the evening we tend to turn to food automatically because it's there. Basically it's accessible, it's available, it's not going to change from day to day, so it's reliable too. Okay, that's a given. So if I do want to turn to food at the end of the day, what do I want this experience to be like? Do I want to eat mindlessly, or on the contrary, do I really want to savor, to really enjoy every bite of this thing that I like so much? And for me, it would be my favorite chocolate. I really want this, but I really want to take my time having little bite to make the pleasure last. So that could be part of your pleasure plan. What else could be part of your pleasure plan? Could it be listening to a song? Could it be listening to some meditation, doing a little bit of hypnosis, or having a favorite song that you can dance to? And can I have this pleasure plan for the end of the day? Or can I have this pleasure plan too in times when, well, I don't feel I can do it in front of my loved one because they're going to hospital, but I will need to feel a little bit good. So can I don't know, do this on the balcony? I don't know. But make sure that you take care of yourself, because we know also this very famous saying, which you can't pour from an empty cup. And we don't want you to be completely empty, because it will be bad for you, but it will also be bad for the one you care for. So the thinking of it ahead, and what would be super fun would be actually to make it fun, to make that pleasure plan, that food plan, actually fun for you when you create it, when you do it, so that it's also the anticipation of doing this, not just the moment when you do this.
I really like that pleasure plan you're talking about, and how it's not just one element. It's not solidly focused on food, that there are multiple layers to creating this moment of pleasure, so that the focus of the pleasure is not the food. It's not removing the food, it's still accepting that, or acknowledging rather than accepting, acknowledging that this is yummy. This is something that I can enjoy, and habit stacking it with dancing, listening to meditation, doing some coloring in, a puzzle, Lego, something that you have intentional attention with, adds it as a whole different experience. To me, that sounds like a moment of intentional grounding whilst you're enjoying the moment of pleasure from the food that you love and enjoy. And I really want to give listeners a few gentle options, not as homework, but just as support in this space. If someone is standing in the kitchen and the urge feels so loud, what's one tiny thing they can do to create just a simple pause without forcing themselves to be perfect and get it right every time?
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that I like to do, because I've been recently certified in havening techniques, and it's been really helpful for those moments when you find yourself in the kitchen, you're aware that you're in the kitchen, you're aware that the next step will be to open the fridge or the pantry or the bag of cookies or whatever, and you don't really want that. So if you, at that time, if you can pause, one thing that you could be doing could be simply to give yourself a hug. Right? Put your hand on your shoulders and drop them down to your elbows, or even to the tip of your fingers, and go back up again and up until your shoulders. You can do that while breathing deep. It's going to make you feel better because it's going to calm your body down. And also when you touch your body like this, giving yourself a gentle hug, it's actually as if when you're in the kitchen and you feel that urge, it feels like a loud alarm in your brain. But when you do that self-hug several times, it actually as if you're putting this alarm, this loud alarm, on the mute button. So that's going to do that. Also, what you could be doing as you're gently hugging yourself and breathing deep could be simply looking around you and finding and naming, listing, and make it fun. It's not homework, as you said. And just simply name 5 objects. You can make it a bit more challenging if you like this. Just like name 5 blue objects, name 5 rectangular objects, whatever it is. But play with this, and it's actually going to not only calm your body down, but also distract your brain in a fake way. So after that, you'll still want to reach for the food, but really deeply, it's going to make it feel safe, which is going to make you release the need for the food as comfort. You're going to get that comfort, to give yourself that comfort from the touch, from the breathing, from the naming whatever is around you, so that afterwards, the urge to eat will actually be decreasing naturally. And you can prepare, you can rehearse for that moment ahead of time, just to notice when you feel a big emotion in yourself. You can do that whenever you want.
I really think it's important for our listeners to understand that in a moment where we're struggling with something, the best and most supportive thing we can do for ourselves is to practice something, a new habit, a new strategy, when we're calm, when there isn't chaos, when we're not struggling to debate with ourselves over something that we might want to eat, or something that we would like to do that maybe not have the best outcomes for us in the long run. So it's really important to acknowledge that when you do it, when you're not in these moments, you have greater access to that skill or that strategy when you're having that moment of challenge. And I really liked how you mentioned havening techniques. For our listeners who are curious, what is it and why can it help with stress eating?
So havening techniques are what I think is called somatic practices, and the founders, the people who found those havening techniques, were actually looking into EFT, emotional freedom technique. So basically the idea is the same. You touch your body, and by doing so you release an emotion. The thing is that I know that havening techniques can be super simple. It can be the self-hug, as I mentioned, but it could also be something that you can do wherever you are, whenever you want, just like you're rubbing your hands together. Contrary to EFT, which is tapping, basically, when you tap the top of your head, people may look at you funny. So that's what I like so much about havening, and also that there has been scientific studies done by those doctors and the team they've worked with that actually prove that indeed your nervous system calms down when you use those gentle havening techniques. And they're called havening techniques because when you touch your body like this, you're creating this safe haven, and that then the body is going to respond better. So the one that I mentioned, the little technique that I mentioned of simply distracting your brain by naming things around you, that's just one thing that you can do, but it can be very deep work too that you do, like it can be traumatic work. And I know that for myself, because of a little accident when I was 6 years old, I couldn't tell my right from my left unless I really thought carefully about this. And I had just one session, and now I know this is right, this is the left side, and I'm not struggling anymore. So it's also surprisingly efficient for trauma. So that can be really good. So I love that. It's simple and efficient. What's not
I
to
like simple and efficient. I like strategies that don't add to our load already, that complement it in the moments. They're not big, grandiose, or granded. No, that's not the right word. They're not grand gestures. They're not something that's going to draw attention to us when we're wanting it to be discreet, that maybe our nervous system is not quite as regulated as we'd like it to be. Maybe we're feeling overwhelmed, we're breathing high in our chest, and it gives our body and our brain a moment of calm when we're in these chaotic moments. And I think it's really important that people can take a breath and just have to be present. And I really like the rubbing of your hands, and it's something that you can do in the cold weather because nobody knows that you don't have cold hands and that you're trying to recenter yourself. And I love grounding. I love choosing 5 objects, 4 things that we can hear, all of the different elements that help us to just bring our nervous system back in check. And I know what you're talking about in relation to the tapping. I see a lot of those videos that come through, and you're right. If you're in a public space, tapping your head in different places, people will be like, what is she doing? Why is she doing that? Is she okay? Do we need to get an intervention going? And so it is taking those moments, because we really don't want medical professionals to know that we're not coping or we're finding a situation difficult, because that generally comes with judgment, notes being made that are not necessary because they're not curious about what's going on for us. So I really appreciate giving those strategies and talking about something new that is backed by science that people can investigate and look into. And while we've been talking, and I've done a little bit of research before we've had our conversation, what does one bite done mean in a self-trust way, not a controlled way?
Yes, what does one bite done mean? Yes. So it means that, and it's something that's very important for me, it doesn't mean that you deprive yourself of the one bite if that's what you want. But it also gives you the choice to stop at one bite if you want to. You don't have to, but at least you're given the choice. Because for so many years, my clients and I have experienced this powerlessness, hopelessness, this completely out of control feeling in terms of the food. As soon as I see this food, it's as if it's already gone and done and I've eaten it all, and I didn't even have the possibility, the option to stop, because it happened so fast, as if it was without my deciding. And so I like this idea that we're now back in power and we're going to learn how to stop at maybe one bite before the bag is done, or 2 bites or 3 bites, and then maybe we're going to have the whole cookie, but just one cookie, because we've noticed that it's actually good for us, and that's actually enough. And maybe one day, if we want to, we can have 1 bite because we're curious. We want to experience that food. We want to check, but we also have the power to say, no, I'm done. That was enough, without forcing ourselves, without white knuckling it, without just saying, oh no, I shouldn't have more. I can't have more. It's not bad for me. It's the complete opposite scenario in our head. It's just, okay, now I know what it's like and I'm done. That's fine. Just releasing the urge or whatever it is. I think that's super powerful. And that's what you mentioned, eating in moderation, whatever that means. It could be 1 bite, it could be 2, doesn't matter, but at least we're in control, we're in charge, we're back in the driver's seats.
And building trust in yourself that you have the capacity to make that change, or to acknowledge that was really good, but that's all I need to help to be in control, to have compassion for myself, to see that I can still have these yummy foods or this specific thing that I really enjoy, but I can have it and be okay to sit and be with it, rather than it being, oh, I need to finish the whole packet. And being flexible that today I need 1 bite, but maybe I need the whole cookie another day, and that's okay. And if a caregiver can take one message from this episode into tonight, what would you want it to be?
Well, the main message that I think is super, super important, because it's the foundation of everything, is to be curious, not furious. It goes back to what we were saying about why. It's really trying to drop this why, but why did I do this again, which is full of protestation, anger, frustration, disappointment for ourselves, and turning it to, why did I do that? I want to know, so that I can learn, so that I can actually change. And so be curious, not furious. That would be my main message.
Love that. Be curious and not furious. I think that's a great small statement that we can take away, and be kind to ourselves. And I want to do practical takeaways. This is a lightning round of a couple of questions that give carers 1 sentence moments to help them. So 1 sentence to meet an urge with compassion instead of shame. So I just want to do some practical takeaways. 1 sentence for caregivers to hold on to in difficult moments. So 1 sentence to meet an urge with compassion instead of shame.
So it could be very simply something along the lines of course I want to eat this food, because I've had a tough day. So it makes perfect sense. And I don't have to eat it. It's just an option. What else can I give myself?
I like that. 1 tiny pause that works even when you're exhausted.
1 tiny pause that works even when you're exhausted. Okay, it's just taking a deep breath. Just that. Just 1. That's already a lot. That can help.
1 way to respond the morning after without punishment.
Well, 1 sentence could be, well, you've done your best. Even if the best is not who you want to be, or that version of the best is not the one you want to have in the long run. You've done your best. And it doesn't stop you from trying to make it better the next time. You've done your best.
I like that. 1 reminder you'd want caregivers to hear when the house goes quiet.
Very often the sentence, oh, you deserve a treat, is just, yes, you deserve the best. What would be the best right now? The very best. That's going to give you the best short term, but also long term.
I like that. What's the best? That could be doing Lego or colouring in. It could be an alternative to food, but giving yourself that moment of pause. What's the best for me right now? Oh, I really like that one. Nan, I'd love our listeners to find out and learn more about you. I'll include all of your links in the show note, but where's the first place people should land to find out more?
Right. Well, the best place, I guess, it would be my website, where they can find my masterclass, my free guide. And so it's called MiloBingeFix.com, and Milo is spelled M-I-L-O, BingeFix.com. And I know that you'll have the links in your show notes. And thank you so much for that.
No worries at all. And when we share our episode, in the show notes on all of the platforms, we will have links that you can click so you don't have to remember or write it down right now. Nan, thank you so much for this conversation and for holding such a topic that's tender with honesty and kindness. Today we've talked about why nighttime eating so often shows up when the house finally goes quiet, how caregivers' depletion and nervous system overload make willpower unreliable, how shame and restriction can quietly keep the cycle going, and how urges can be a message, not a mortal failure. If you're listening and this is your private struggle, you're not broken. Your nervous system has just been working overtime, and food has been one of the ways you've tried to cope. And you don't have to do this perfectly to change it. Hey, lovely caregiver to caregiver, if today's episode supported you even in a small way, would you share it with another caregiver who's holding it together in hard rooms too? And if you have a quick moment, leaving a review on Apple Podcast really helps this reach more caregivers who need calmer days, clearer words, and practical support. I'll see you right back here next time for another episode. I'm Michelle, and this is Nervous System Resets for Caregivers. No pressure, no perfect routines, and no toxic positivity. Just one gentle reset and one practical next step. Until next time, take gentle care of your radiant moments and of yourself.